Well, we're back. Welcome back, Mets fans, to another edition of the Just Mets podcast, an emergency live stream. And it's all again to talk about a New York Met that has been here a while and is now no longer a New York Met. My name is Andrew Claudio. That is Rich MacLeod. We are here for the Jeff McNeil has been traded emergency live stream. He is traded to the Athletics of Sacramento, formerly of Oakland of California. Are they acknowledging Sacramento this year?
Yes, this year. So interestingly enough, in 2025, per Major League Baseball, you were not allowed to address them as the Sacramento A's. In 2026, you will be able to do that. I don't know why they changed their mind. And as we know, in the next, 2 years, they will change once again and they will be the Las Vegas Athletics. So in a transitional phase.
Some of this is from talking to a couple of Uber drivers when I was at Summer League for Vegas and in Vegas for Summer League. And that just I've been following the progress of the Vegas Stadium, which looks like the Symphony Opera House in Sydney. The Opera House in Sydney. That regardless, Jeff McNeil got traded. You can see there's not as much pomp and circumstance as there was for the Pete Alonso or the Edwin Diaz trade. The details: he is traded to the Athletics of soon-to-be Vegas for a 17-year-old rookie baller who was not listed in the top 30 on MLB's pipeline, MLB.com's top 30 prospect rankings. His name is Yordan Rodriguez. He is 17 years old. Pitched in 8 games last year, 1 start in rookie ball. What's also going to the Athletics is $5.7 million, as well as an additional $2 million to cover the $2 million buyout for Jeff McNeil next season, which means this is a salary dump and it clears a 40-man roster spot. But as far as the fact that Jeff McNeil is no longer a New York Met, Rich, let's just start there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in an offseason that has now, we are now at the completion of a, whether you want to say well orchestrated or poorly orchestrated, but intentional dismantling of the core to every level. Jeff McNeil was the final piece of that demolition, and I think the most obvious of the 4 players to go. I think that's why we're not surprised. This one felt like more like we've just been waiting the entire offseason for the inevitable Jeff McNeil trade, if we're being honest. I think a lot of people have been waiting for the Jeff McNeil trade probably for 2 to 3 years at this point. He held on longer than anybody thought. It makes sense. He became a redundancy. You know, people had opinions on him in the clubhouse. I don't want to speculate on clubhouse stuff anymore, to be completely honest. I know he didn't like drinking water. That's a story maybe we could talk about later. But to its core, like, McNeil was a good Met when you go back to, what was it, 2017, 2018, when he first came up. He was not a big prospect. He was kind of an older minor leaguer that caught on in Double-A, and in a lean era for the Mets. This is like those couple of bad seasons right after the 2 playoff years. Jeff McNeil was one of the only kind of like hopes for a fan base of, hey, maybe we found this like diamond in the rough. And he really did wind up being that. He became a batting champion, was a really key cog in this lineup for several years, and was just like a really cool story. I think that he ran his course here ultimately and had some trials and tribulations in the last several seasons, but I think he was a good Met, and they got a lot more from him than I think any of us ever expected when you first heard of his name in the summer of 2017, 2018.
It's well said. I think it's an appropriate reaction from a human standpoint to remember the hype around him when he first showed up. I believe he actually showed up in 2018.
I think so. So you started hearing his name the year prior, and then in 2018 he comes up halfway through that pretty crummy season.
There was that stretch of prospects coming up with Ahmed Rosario and Dom Smith, and Jeff McNeil, and obviously a slugger named Pete Alonso making his way through the rankings. I remember when he came up in 2018, and it was the combo of Nimmo, because as we talked about on the Nimmo live stream, Nimmo being Nimmo coming up and being like a 400 on base guy, only to become a leadoff hitter. And then him and McNeil, it was like we had these two lefties at the top of the order. And despite Dom Smith not performing in his first year, we were able to enjoy what McNeil was doing as like a low power, high contact, old school slap hitter that was hitting for average. And then in the beginning of 2019, he's an all-star, hitting like 350 at the deadline. And then he opts to hit for more power and hits over 20 home runs that season and finishes with an OPS over 900. And it's like, all right, what is this? Like they found their second baseman that was also playing left field, that was also playing center field, that was at times playing right field. And it just kind of deteriorated from there in ways. I know he won the batting title in 2022. Then the shift went away, and this season there was a stretch where it looked like he was starting to turn things around. Yeah, it's. Do you look at his tenure with the Mets more positive or more negative?
I think positive. I think it got to the point where it's like, okay, it is time to move on. Just because of some of the things that went on, his deteriorating skill set, the fact that, clearly him and Lindor didn't really love each other. Funny enough, this was just pointed out in the comments. It's been about a half an hour since McNeil got traded, maybe 40 minutes at this point. And Francisco Lindor just posted on Instagram 2026 season loading. Hilarious comedic timing, whether it's on purpose or not. I do think that'll probably be one of the things McNeil is remembered for the most, is the raccoon thing. But I still think he was a positive Met. When you really take a step back and what the expectations were, again, this was kind of like a non-prospect who really helped this team. It's unfortunate that, after 2022, he was never quite that guy again, because if we're being completely frank, while he was solid in 2025, the Mets really could have used a hitter like that this past year, what McNeil had been earlier in his career. And I think that that's kind of what they're looking for now, is a bunch of guys who have similar skill sets to early days Jeff McNeil than maybe latter days Jeff McNeil.
And look, you mentioned the redundancy on the roster. When they traded for Mark Semien, his everyday spot at second base was taken away.
Yep.
Now adding Polanco, like you have, look, I never believed that he was that. Again, respect to Tim Healy. I never for once thought that Jeff McNeil was going to be part of a first base platoon with the New York Mets.
No.
And after seeing Jorge Polanco's press conference today, it does seem that is him and Vientos are going to be the first base DH platoon. Now I say that as we start to transition into what's next, which is I think the more curious and fascinating part of this. The Mets just cleared $10 million in payroll, and they also cleared a 40-man roster spot with this trade, because unless Yordan Rodriguez was brought here to be the 40th man, I think this is going to be a prospect and a project that there's a chance we just never hear from him again. Hopefully we do. He's 17 years old, a lot of baseball ahead of him. But this was a salary dump, and I'm very curious to see what they do next with, unless Puma was right, with the now 10 million more available payroll space that they have and the spot to go get someone. And this is where I'm a broken man at this point, Rich MacLeod, in trying to predict what the Mets are going to do this offseason, because everything that's been reported, everything I've heard them say has just gone the other way. Pete's a great Met. We want to try and bring him back. We hope there's an avenue to bring him back. Never even made him an offer.
Right.
We want to bring back Edwin Diaz. And then you lowball him with the offer that you made him. But it seemed like they were also surprised that he never came back to them. They misread the market. He wanted to be a Dodger, whatever. The comments about Jeff McNeil from the end of season presser to the Brandon Nimmo presser, that Jeff's excited and Jeff is happy to be part of what we're doing here. Well, Jeff's going to Sacramento, so Jeff's not going to be part of anything that we're doing here. I guess my question to you, Rich, is like, what are you most intrigued by, or does this intrigue you now about what they can now do with the 10 million in space? Like, where does your head go to there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talked about when we were recording last night on our weekly episode, and we actually did talk about this a little bit with Jeff McNeil, was the fact that you're already paying Jorge Polanco and Marcus Semien together a combined $45 million in 2026. Had Jeff McNeil stayed here, that's another $15 million. So that's $60 million for those three kind of middle infielder type players. They're also getting connected to Luis Robert, who's, I believe he's making $20 million. So it just starts to add up quite a bit for non-star players. So I think clearing some of that salary to give themselves more flexibility to make new moves for the 2026 roster makes a lot of sense. The question is, what caliber of player are they going to seek with that extra $10 million? Is it more money in the Cody Bellinger fund, or is it just like Ryan O'Hearn or Luis Robert, and it's just like, now we only have to really pay Luis Robert $10 million extra than before? I think that's going to be the key question here, is just how aggressive are they going to be? And it, like, this podcast has become so unbelievably repetitive because it's just like every move that they make or every person that leaves this team, it only gives you a picture what the 2026 New York Mets aren't going to be, but we have no idea what the 2026 New York Mets are going to be. And that remains the same today on December 22nd at 4:15 p.m.
What's the line for the Cohen tax? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know. I don't.
Okay. All right. Their current projected payroll tax is $303 million. After this trade, that's 59 million. I guess we'll just call it around 60 over the luxury tax threshold. I'm going to assume they are. This is either right at the Cohen tax or just over the Cohen tax. If this, I just personally cannot see the year after you sign Juan Soto that this was a year about getting under the Cohen tax. I just can't. So I have to think an addition or two is coming. I like you said, if it's Ryan O'Hearn, if it's Luis Robert, which I'm now going to call him by his appropriate name, Robert. If it's Ramon Laureano and it's a trade, but who might go out in that trade? Is that a Kodai Senga trade that potentially goes out? Is that a David Peterson trade that potentially goes out? Yeah, I'm left, like you said, the repetition of our conversations on here of just guessing what the Mets are doing. The thing I know is that no player that was on the Mets before the pandemic will be on the Mets going forward. No Met that was on the roster pre-2020, because David Peterson made his debut in 2020. No other Met will be on the roster going forward. That's how I was able to explain this to my wife, because I met her in 2020. It's like, no Met from before I met you is going to be on the Mets anymore. So it's a way to spin it to make us feel better, but it's also still leaving me just as curious as a Mets fan and content creator. Very confused, but also honestly less confused and more so curious what they do next.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the roster right before we came on, and with McNeil now gone, the entire Mets 40-man roster has only two players that Billy Epler gave Major League Contacts tracks to left, and it's Francisco Lindor and it's Kodai Senga. One of those players might also be traded this offseason, and Francisco Lindor is kind of an exception, I think, to that rule. So if you're curious what the Mets are doing here, what David Stearns is doing here, I think that part of it is quite obvious. It's like, this is now his team without a doubt. If whether or not you agree with that, this is a 2-year thing coming at this point of I'm flushing out the Epler and even before that era of guys, and I'm bringing in my dudes, and we're going to see if it works. But yeah, I think probably by the end of this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if Lindor was the only Epler move remaining on this roster in terms of guys that were given major league contracts. Obviously, there's some prospects from the Epler era that will remain here, but it's interesting to see that transition being made so decisively, I guess, this winter.
Gosh, would you like to bring up the other thing that's been out there? The potential next move that they could make.
Yeah, well, this I will say is a non-repetitive thing. This is something we have not spoken about at all this offseason. So let's bring this up. Right before we came on here, when we were talking about, hey, who is that player that could potentially fill the spot? Is it something boring? All of a sudden, we see this tweet on the timeline from Francis Romero, who is a member of the BBWAA. He's followed by pretty much all of the Mets beat writers on Twitter, if that makes you feel better. And he tweeted out 3:50 p.m. with Jeff McNeil gone, the Mets are believed to be exploring Ketel Marte, or at least discussing him in trade talks per an industry source. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this? Because this is one that really surprised us, and I think also kind of juiced us up right before we hit the go live button.
To play where? They just traded for a second baseman. Is now you might know better than I would. Is there any discussion about Marte playing third base or playing a different? Is he also going to play first base? Is this just we're going to get every second baseman we can to play first base?
It's the San Diego Padres model of middle infielders playing every other position.
Yeah.
I will say, and it's been a few years, Ketel Marte did come up as an outfielder. He was a center fielder. I don't think they're going to put him back in center field because it's been about 4 to 5 years. But is he a left field option? Would they move him to third base? And again, is the Brett Beatty thing more up for discussion, whether he's traded or he learns first base and splits time there with a Polanco? I'm not sure. But it really got the wheels turning in my brain. I'll say that.
You could look. I'll just start here. If moving Brett Beatty to the outfield and Marte to third base and having Jorge Polanco be your first baseman is run prevention, I clearly just don't know what run prevention is. That you then will have three players that have not played a position consistently recently, playing those positions next season. Then I just don't know what run prevention means. I thought the whole point was to go get really good people at their position. Having said that, I like Ketel Marte. I would have loved him instead of Marcus Semien at the beginning of the offseason. I'm intrigued by it. If it's a like, hey, now we're interested in Ketel Marte, we're gonna turn Semien around and trade him elsewhere. It's the most cold-blooded trade you could potentially make ever. And then to your point about the Brett Beatty element of this, if you're bringing in Marte to be your third baseman, and then Brett Beatty is now a trade chip, you could then get extremely aggressive and enter the Scooble sweepstakes with a legitimate offer of a third baseman and a couple of these pitchers. Although the holiday promo that the Mets put out there today with the three young pitchers, Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, and Brandon Sproat, watching the Mets, Mr. and Mrs. Met, play versions of Elf on the Shelf was very adorable and clearly intended to be like, see, we've got homegrown Mets on the way. Don't worry about the ones that we're trading this offseason. It raises an eyebrow for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to discredit Francis Romero's report here. I'm just going to say, even the way this is reported, exploring Ketel Marte, discussing him in trade talks, like none of this is like, we've heard so many versions of this offseason that I'm just going to let the Mets surprise me with what they do next. I'm not now fully going to I think they're going to now explore Ketel Marte. Like he has a chance to be a New York Met, because for all I know, this is actually just making space to go get, like you said, Luis Robert or Ryan O'Hearn. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we want to pour a little cold water on some of the alternative playing spots for Ketel Marte, if the Mets were interested in that, he's played 11 career innings at third base, and it was in 2017. That's 8 years ago. Will be 9 by the time that the season starts. He's only ever played center field. He's never played a corner outfield position. The last time he did so in the outfield in a meaningful way, he played 3 innings in 2023. It was 4 years ago in 2021. He played over 500 innings in center field, and he was worth negative 14 defensive runs saved, negative 4 outs above average, so not very good, which is why he got converted to second base. He's a great player. I think he would be a great guy to add to the team, but to your point, I don't know where he fits right now unless something else extremely unexpected happened. Or if they're just like, hey, Ketel Marte, you're gonna learn third left field. Beatty, you're gonna move around, either stay on the team again and learn a new position, or he gets traded for something else. And the David Stearns run prevention thing was just bullshit to get you accepting of the fact that Pete Alonso wasn't coming back, mostly because they just didn't want him back and not because of his defense at first base. But we'll see. I'm so tired of saying we'll see, but like everything has just been like we'll see. I don't know, like if this then that. It's just been it's been a strange start to the offseason in terms of the amount of things that have happened involving the Mets, and yet we still have like no fucking clue what they're doing right now.
Not a clue.
Which
Not
doesn't
a
mean
one.
which doesn't mean it's going to end bad. It's just who the hell knows what's going to happen next at this point. I mean, the McNeil getting traded was the only obvious thing left, and now it's about adding people.
And even the McNeil trade isn't as obvious. I thought, like they've done in the past with rehabilitating players that may not be the highest of value, not trading McNeil last offseason, not trading Marte last offseason when it seemed as if suitors were out there, not trading Kodai Senga yet, or Manaya, or any of the other players yet this offseason. You know, not just doing a trade to do a trade. Rich, this feels like just doing a trade to get Jeff McNeil off the books. So this is now against type to an extent. So I'm generally curious where they go next.
Yeah.
You want to get to some questions in the chat?
Let's do it.
So let's start here with Kaiser Soze. Just a general observation. Traded for a 17-year-old minor leaguer, rolling on the floor laughing my ass off. Exclamation.
Yeah. I mean, to the point you were just making, like it is a dumping of like the highest proportion of like maybe this kid is good. I mean, he's so young, he's not even in like the ranked prospects at this point. Maybe he will be going into 2026 when these sites refresh all that stuff, but that's how young he is. And I truly think this is about the Mets just didn't want Jeff McNeil on the roster anymore. They made it so that he was redundant, not probably on purpose. And I thought they'd get more back than this. I didn't think they'd get a real thing back, but for it to be a 17-year-old who we very likely will never see in the major leagues, and if we do, it's not going to be for 5 years at least, if not longer than that. I mean, the last time the Mets collapsed in 2007, which is very similar to 2025 that just happened. Yordan Rodriguez, who's the pitcher they just acquired, was not alive yet. He was born in January of 2008. So we're not going to see this guy for a long time. And yeah, the Mets really just like we don't want you anymore, Jeff McNeil, and we will even pay $5 million extra dollars plus the $2 million bonus or the buyout for 2027 to get rid of you.
I'm not even looking at this as a trade for Yordan Rodriguez. He's the third thing the Mets got back, so you actually get a player back. They got $10 billion in space. They got a 40-man roster spot. That's what I'm looking at this as. They traded Jeff McNeil for a spot, which is now why I'm curious what they do with the spot, so we'll see. From A Mud Productions, do any of those ideas excite you though? Laureano, Robert, No, they don't excite me. They need a left fielder, and they probably need a center fielder too. Like, at this point, if they went in as is, I would be even less excited. It would be progress. It would be a step forward, and then hopefully Carson Bench and Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford are as real as David Stearns believes they are. That is my thoughts on that.
It's a very hard thing to separate and compartmentalize of just like, would it excite us? Like, as you said, no. Are they?
Someone in the chat just Someone in the chat just tweeted, just said, "It's not run prevention; it's attendance reduction." I can't help but laugh at that. Well done, Kaiser Soze. I continue.
Shout out Kaiser Soze. Yeah. It's very hard to compartmentalize, and I'm not even saying you should, but like the damage is done in terms of the guys that they have lost. Not even counting the Jeff McNeil stuff, but Alonso Diaz, Nimmo, and the guys they haven't signed so far in free agency. But can they bring in guys and be better than they are today? Laureano or a Robert, you're not getting both. Would make them modestly better than they are at this exact moment. Again, if that's like the biggest move they have left in the tank, then that is quite concerning. But if it is just an incremental improvement type of move and they have other bigger things that are coming after the holidays, then like I think that's fine. It's just like it all depends on what the final picture is going to be. Say what you will about Jeff McNeil. He was worth just over 2 wins last year. That's now off the Mets roster, which puts them in the hole even further than they were before today. I mean, I have to look at the updated numbers on that, but they're about like 5 to 6 wins below where they were at the end of 2025 with the players that they've lost and added so far this offseason.
No, it doesn't excite me. Ramon Laureano, no, it doesn't excite me. Luis Robert, they're both better than any left or center outfield option that they have, which now that Nimmo and McNeil are gone, it's not even so much that they don't excite me, but I would prefer them. Like I would like them. They don't have an everyday major league left fielder right now. It's Tyrone Taylor and Juan Soto. They have 2 outfielders on the major league roster. Now, on the 40-man, yes, you have Carson Bench, but like one with major league experience, they don't have. So like I'm assuming that I have to assume because I don't know what David Stearns is going to do next. Maybe he looks at Ketel Marte as a left fielder. I'm assuming that the next move will be for an outfielder, and Bob Nightingale will get one right. I am assuming that's where we go next. I wouldn't mind Ramon Laureano as the everyday left fielder, and then Benj is in center, though. So we'll see. Next up, and I think this is an actual fascinating analogy. This is from Maju Varghese. Thank you, Maju. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. If Stearns was running a home renovation project, he still has the demo crew working. But at some point, he has to actually build something, right? Asking for a few million friends. This has always been my contest when I hear people defend Stearns in that he's building something in his own image. He needed to take a wrecking ball to this. And I think this is also my rejection when I talk about this in NBA circles, Rich. Like the Sam Hinkie truthers out there that were the whole trust the process thing.
Right.
It's very easy to tear something down and strip it for parts. The difficult thing is to build it into something, to build it back up again. It's why what Sam Presti's 100%. Done in OKC is one of the most impressive things you will ever see a GM do. He had a contender, tore it down all the way to the very bottom, and then built it into potentially the next dynasty in its sport. We don't know that David Stearns can build it back up again. I think he's smart. Remain so impressed by the infrastructure. I celebrated with all the other dorks the international free agency war that they won against the Yankees the other day, because it was actually a move that the Mets made, you know. But he's very clearly building out the farm system to a place that is well respected amongst the sport. From a major league standpoint, the jury's still out. We're still, to your point, Maju. We are still figuring out if he can build a major league contender in this market. We'll see what he builds. The thing has been torn down, though. We are at demolition day, and the house has been flattened. We'll see if he builds it back up into a mansion, or if this thing is going to have a new property owner in a few years.
Well said.
Yeah, that's where I got. Do you have anything on this, or are you good?
No, I think you said it as well as you could.
Good. This is for you.
Kevin Danishevsky with the $2 super chat. Shout out to you, Kevin. You will not trade Brett Baty. No. I did see Kevin in the chat as well brought up. Don't forget Jet Williams when thinking of the Met prospects who could play the outfield. I don't know that they will.
Didn't I say Jet? I guess I said Benj in that most recent thing of they don't have outfielders on the route. Jet Williams has also played a handful of games in center field, too. I'm ignoring this. Go ahead. Your question.
I don't know that they will or will not trade Brett Baty. They've said that he's going to be back and starting at third base. Again, what the Mets say in public and what most teams say publicly, honestly, in the off seasons is not particularly trustworthy. These teams are not just going to tell you what they're going to do out loud in public and give up all of their leverage that they have. So I could see the Mets potentially, again, moving Baty to another position, or potentially trading at the peak of his value, or what they believe would be the peak of his value, if they were to bring in a Ketel Marte who's going to play third base, or get in on the Alex Bregman sweepstakes. I think those would probably be the only two moves where they would move a Brett Baty. Neither of those seems super likely to me right now. Although, again, that Marte report that we just read from about an hour ago, it piqued my interest. It's the first time we thought of it. So I wouldn't say Baty being traded is impossible, but that would surprise me a little bit, at least as of today.
We're both on record. We would be perfectly fine with Brett Baty being your opening day third baseman. I want him to play against lefties next year. He did not look helpless against lefties the second half of the season. He is a perfectly fine 7-hitter that played a very good defensive third base next season. And the next step is for him to get better with the bat, because I think the glove is here to stay. We're both rationally fine with Brett Baty and his spot on the New York Mets. Next up from City Moons, Vientos full-time DH. He doesn't have spots. He doesn't have options left. So one more year to prove himself. Okay. Your thoughts is yes or no? And then if you want to expand on it, you can. Is Mark Vientos a Met on opening day?
I'm weirdly leaning towards yes, and I was not there the last 3, 4, honestly, probably like 5 months. I think we were halfway through the season, and I was like, oh, this dude is done here. I mean, right now, things are leaning towards him coming back and getting one last chance at whether it's first base or DH. I don't think you'll ever see him play third base again, and if he does, then I can promise you David Stearns absolutely was full of shit when he's talking about run prevention, because Mark Vientos is a very bad defensive third baseman. I wouldn't be thrilled with it, but if you want to roll the dice on there being something in that bat still and trying to find out for sure before you move on, like, okay, I'm going to need a lot more guarantees in other spots of the roster, though, if you're going to keep a Vientos who is a total roll of the dice and has had one good 4-month stretch in 4 major league stints, some of them particularly short and inconsistent, but still, he was very bad in 2025 for most of the season.
I opt yes as well. I think he will be. I would assume he is only going to play first base if he plays the field this year, barring an injury to Brett Beatty. But even then, I think they'd put Polanco at third base. I think the fact that Vientos has no options left this person's question, to this person's point, makes it that it's the most make or break year you could potentially have for Mark Vientos. And that lack of flexibility actually, like, if we're doing confidence meter, I'm at like 51-49. Like, it would not shock me at all if they trade him because they went out and got Ryan O'Hearn, because they went out and got another DH option or first base option. Yeah, I again, I opt yes that he'll be here. It'd be very annoying that after last season, Vientos gets to stay, but Alonso had to leave. But understanding the payroll restrictions they've put themselves under, it makes the most sense, I guess. Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Okay. The couple more questions. This one from Wayne and Wayne
Vanderhoff.
Made Zanderhoff, excuse me. Vanderhoff, that's what it is. Wade and Vanderhoff. Watch them re-sign Starling Marte. I just hope you all are following along with Juan Soto's off-season, where every event he goes to, his friend Starling Marte is there. I understand amongst the Hispanic baseball community, Starling Marte is royalty, and that's why Juan Soto looks up to him so much. It would be malpractice if the guy that gets to come back from the Mets last season is Starling Marte. Please go to Pittsburgh, have a farewell tour with a fan base that never gets to sign anybody. Steve Cohen will throw in extra FaceTime that you can talk to Marte. Let him FaceTime Marte during games. I'd be okay with it. I don't need him taking an at bat for the New York Mets next year, Rich.
Yeah. Starling Marte has no place on this Mets roster. Thank you for your service from 2022 through 2025. He was awesome in 2022. You can make an argument Starling Marte was the most important player on the Mets in 2022. He was such a key cog to that team when he broke his hand late in the year. That was I think a contributing factor to what happened that September. He is 37 years old. He's essentially a DH only. If you stick him in the outfield, he's very limited. He's not fast anymore. You saw that when he got thrown out at home in that game against the Brewers this summer. He just doesn't offer you very much, and you signed Polanco already. You have Vientos on this roster. They need to add more spots. Like, I wouldn't understand where he would even play, and I'm not particularly worried that they'll be bringing back Starling Marte, and I believe is 0.7 F4 from last season. It's just, I think a Pirates-esque team could get a little bit of value out of him and some veteran leadership, but he's in the twilight of his major league career at this point and doesn't fit.
If they couldn't bring back JD Martinez last year, they can't bring back Starling Marte this year for clubhouse reasons. Like, they just can't. That's indefensible. And I got to think David Stearns knows that.
No more. I don't think David Stearns has a want for any player mascots, as we saw with the guys he let go last year.
Indeed. So I'm gonna extend an olive branch. 2 from Kevin Danishevsky.
Wow.
Chances Kyle Tucker is a Met. Do you want to do the confidence meter right now?
Sure. I guess we'll have to start designing one for this too, now that we lost our other confidence meter.
But it's just gonna be you and me at the very beginning of the chart, and that's it. 0 and 0.5.
When we recorded, so our weekly episode dropped this morning. We recorded last night. I was at 5% with Tucker. You were at literally 0%. Have you moved at all in the last 24 hours?
I'll go 0.5. I'll add 0.5 to the calculation. They have a spot open. Whether they use it to go get a productive. I don't think there's a world Kyle Tucker falls into the Bregman territory of needing to take a 1-year deal, which is the only way I think he ends up being a New York Met, that he's willing to go play a different position on a different team for 1 season at a high AAV with some security built in if he gets hurt. I think he gets 7 to 8 years, at least 6. And as I've mentioned many times throughout the last 3 weeks, since it's been established what the payroll restrictions are, but understanding who the GM is and who runs the payroll now, I will believe David Stearns signs someone to a contract of more than 3 years when he does that. And if someone brings up Juan Soto, do your homework. That is a Steve Cohen acquisition. So I don't think Kyle Tucker then also ends up on the books unless he'll take the Kyle Schwarber offer with an opt-out after 1 season.
Yeah, I have it very low. I'll stick at my 5%. Still 95% chance he's not going to sign here. Because I'm in the same spot of like, he makes perfect sense. And if they did it again, like their whole offseason starts to make a lot more sense if that's the kind of guy that they were turning the roster over for. But I'm just at this point of hurt or PTSD or whatever you want to call it, where I also will not believe it until the pass and notification comes out. And even then I'll probably check it 12 times to make sure it's real and we didn't get fooled, because I probably still wouldn't believe it then.
Kevin's other one, if Kyle Tucker is a Met, does that do enough to mitigate the loss of Diaz and Pete? I've already said to you, yes. Like if you're making me move on from Pete Alonso, I get over it very quickly if you move on to something else. If moving on to something else is the theory of this team can be better with Jorge Polanco playing a position he's never played in the major leagues outside of 1 batter, I'm less convinced, and hope you're right with Scott Hatteberg at first base, Billy. But I'm at the point of the Mets don't have a first baseman on the roster. They don't have a left fielder on the roster, and they don't have an everyday center fielder on the roster. If they go get Kyle Tucker, he has experience at first base, has experience in the outfield. It changes a lot. I actually, to Kevin's question here about Diaz/Pete, I still would have a lot of questions about the Mets bullpen, even if they were able to just get Kyle Tucker. I do not trust Devin Williams as currently constructed as a 9th inning option going into the playoffs. He might have a bounce back outstanding season. Has not shown he could do it in this market just yet. So I still have questions about the bullpen, but it would do a lot to change the spin of this offseason, if you've consistently said, if they go get a Kyle Tucker, Rich.
It would make me feel a lot better. And yeah, it would, like I said, things would start making sense. It would start coming together. Believe it when I see it.
Yeah, same. Again, confidence meter, 0.5 and 5. Kaiser Soze with another one. Do season ticket holders get a partial rebate this season? I feel bad for season ticket holders that opted in, because you had to opt in early last year to any of your your ticket packages, especially if you wanted to be eligible for postseason tickets. I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to quote Eric Chavez. Winning will fix everything. If this team does come out and win, there's probably somebody else that said that I could have quoted better. He's just the one most recently that I saw said that in his.
It's a pretty funny person to quote.
Instagram Q&A. Yeah. Winning will cure everything. If this team gets off to a 20-10 start, nobody's going to care about who they lost this offseason. If they win the division, nobody's going to care about what happened this offseason. I don't know how they get to either of those paths at the moment, but winning will cure everything. So I will say I hope you enjoy the rest of Citi Field and what it has to offer, and take advantage of the secondary market, I guess.
Yeah, I very much hope that the season ticket holders, by the time that the season actually starts, are rewarded for obviously their hard-earned money, but also their patience. I hope so, and if not, then try to sell those things or enjoy the food. They've got great food, a lot
City
of
Field does have
options.
outstanding food. I will say that
Yeah,
it's a dinner out. It's a very expensive dinner out, but it's a dinner out at the ballpark. Kaiser
yeah,
Soze. This potentially is the last one from Evan Galinsky. I know Byron Buxton has a no trade clause, but my God, he's perfect for this team. Any possibility they make a run for him on the market? What is Buxton's contract remaining? Because, like, first of all, yes, you're
I'll
right.
look it up.
Him having a no trade clause has largely made him a non-existent possibility for the Mets. I'm sure it's something they've explored. I'm sure it's a possibility a lot of teams have explored. His injury history does scare me, but
Yeah,
he's the guy I've told you this when we did the remember when we did possibilities for this offseason to replace different spots, right? And we talked about Byron Buxton, and then the Mets decided, hey, I hear you're Byron Buxton, and I now offer you a Ramon Laureano, like a Lars Nootbaar. Um,
yeah.
I sorry, it's gonna come up once an episode. The Lars Nootbaar reference. I have to say it once an episode just to get the reaction. I would
My
love
God.
Byron Buxton. What's his remaining contract, Rich?
Byron Buxton is under contract for 3 more seasons. He is making just $15.1 million a year for each of the next 3 seasons, identical money each year. So about 3 years and $45.3 to $4 million left on his deal. He's 32 years old. Um, yeah, he's making significantly below market value for being the type of player he is at the position that he is playing in center field. He is dynamic. He is very good offensively, even better defensively. For those of you who aren't paid subscribers and you only got a clip of the Patreon episode that we did this past week, I had Disha Thosar on, who covers the Mets and just Major League Baseball as a whole for Fox Sports. And she actually mentioned Buxton as, a potential surprise move that she could see the Mets making on the offensive side of the ball. So again, it'll depend if Buxton is willing to waive his no trade, and if the Minnesota Twins for some reason are halting their roster upheaval in the middle because they blew up a lot of their team in the summer. They have not made any moves so far this offseason to continue that, but Buxton makes a lot of sense. I think the only scare with me is just like what you said was the injuries, and do you make a trade for him and then he plays like 70 games this season and most of the season is just waiting for Byron Buxton to come back, and it becomes like, oh, Buxton coming off the injured list is like making an acquisition at the trade deadline. Shout out to the Wilpons
Good
and
Lord.
Sandy Alderson. That would worry me, but it probably wouldn't prevent me from pulling the trigger if he's actually available.
Price would also matter though. I'm not trading one of my higher prospects for him. In
What would
his
be the line for you, because it's not going to be cheap?
um I would trade Brandon Sproat for him. I would probably
Would you go Tong? It would probably
weirdly
I would have
no.
to think it'd probably take you. Okay.
But Mason Miller pitches and I have 5 more years of control. He's like very young, which is why I was pro Miller. But like that wasn't also me saying you have to make that trade. I would be fine just letting Jonathan stay on the Mets. The injury scare is so significant with Byron Buxton. He played 126 games last season, which is the second most in his career by a lot. He played
Mm-hmm.
140 games in 2017. He played 126 games last year. He played 102 games the year before in 2024. Those are the only times he's played over 100 games in his career. In his 162 game average for his career is a 878 no, excuse me, a 795 OPS, a 114 OPS plus a 5.4 WAR. So like at a 162 game aggregate for Byron Buxton, it's a perennial all-star. He has not, like, I'm not trading significant capital for a 32-year-old that just doesn't play 100 games consistently. That's me at
Can
least.
can I play a little bit of devil's advocate?
Please
with you real
do
quick?
convince me.
Is even with the injuries this past season and obviously in his career, you talked about how you'd trade Tong for a Mason Miller, but not a Byron Buxton. In just 126 games this past season, Buxton had a 5.0 F4. Mason Miller had 2.0 F4. So even with that, I think that's something to factor in. Is Mason Miller is awesome. If the Mets got him, that would be fucking awesome. He is a relief pitcher, and a position player is just going to be significantly more valuable than that, even if he misses, let's say, a quarter of the season.
The problem with equating what one means in F4 to what the other means in F4, like go throughout Buxton's career and how many years did he get enough playing time throughout the course of a season to get to an adequate F4, right? Like we're talking about someone that I mean, I just read the numbers. He's played over 100 games 3 times in his career, and he's going to turn 33 this upcoming season. If I'm betting low on Mason Miller potentially being the closer on my team, like Edwin Diaz when the Mets traded for him way back when, and the Mets suddenly I know they had to worry about the 9th inning that first year, and at times he was scary, but you knew who the closer of the Mets was going to be when he didn't have a World Baseball Classic to play in first. I would bet on that more than I would a 32-year-old that can't stay on the field finally staying on the field for the second time in back-to-back seasons, right? So that's more the calculation. Look, I would trade Sproat for him. I don't necessarily think I would trade. I would hope the Twins are looking to combine Joe Ryan in that if I'm trading Jonah Tong in that as well. And you're making it like, we'll take your veterans because we're trying to win something this year, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Him having a no trade clause just to fully. Oh, sorry, I stepped on it. Say it again.
No, I'm just saying, if Joe Ryan it's a package thing, which I don't think the Twins would do because it seemed like they were very intent on separating all of their trades last year to get the most value they possibly could. But if you could somehow package the two together, then I think it's obviously much more easy to part with a larger prospect haul because you are getting a center fielder in addition to a starting pitcher.
Fair. Totally fair. I think a lot of this might also end up being moot because he has no trade clause. He could we could come up with a perfect trade that makes sense for both teams. And he could say, I like Minnesota and I want to stay there, which is what he said at the All-Star break this past season. Thank you everybody for the participation on this. These mailbags end up being very fun during an off season that's been very confusing for all of us. Any final thoughts? I mean, we didn't really go through if I don't know if Jeff McNeil ranks anywhere all time with the Mets. Is he a top 100 Met ever?
Oh boy. He might get in there. 2-time All-Star, 1-time batting champ. The Mets don't have a ton of those. He's the first Mets batting champ since Jose Reyes in what wound up being Reyes' final season with the Mets.
Yeah, 2011.
So I bet if you looked at the WAR metrics and stuff like that, like I don't know if he'd finish top 100, but you could make an argument for him being towards the end of that. He was a good player for this team, and I don't know that like I will miss him, so to speak, but I value what he brought to the team while he was here, and he was on the team for 8 years. Like it is truly now officially the end of an era of Mets baseball. And was it particularly successful? No, though we saw, I mean, they've been more successful in these last 4 to 5 years than they had been before that, which is not saying very much, but I appreciate his contributions to the franchise. I think it was time to move on, but we're in a brand new place right now, and I don't know exactly where that is yet, but this is a new era of Mets baseball that is starting here in this offseason.
I'm trying to find where he ranks in B-WAR all time for the Mets. So just I'm gonna ask you another question. What will be your Jeff McNeil lasting image? Your favorite Jeff McNeil moment, if you could think of one.
Ooh, I mean, we did talk about. You know what sucks is that McNeil didn't really have any big playoff moments. 2022, I don't particularly remember him doing much. Again, they only played 3 playoff games that season. And in the run in 2024, if you remember, McNeil was hurt. He came back just for the NLCS. I don't think he might have started one game towards the end of the Dodgers series, but he was not super healthy. I think he pinch hit 8-9 times in the playoffs. He didn't really do very much.
Can I actually add the clarity? It's actually a very infuriating thing what they did with McNeil. They started him in Game 4, in Game 5, and Game 6, and Iglesias, the whole guy that we rallied around, couldn't get off the bench for the remaining 3 games of the series. Now, I thought he needed to sit. Like Iglesias didn't need to be a sacred cow, but there was an important at bat with the bases loaded in Game 6 when the Mets were still technically in, I think, down 6-3 at the point.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dodgers brought in Vesia, the lefty, the only lefty in their pen, to face McNeil. And I'm staring at it like the guy that's been the contact hitter that's gotten every 2-out hit with the bases loaded this season. You pinch hit Iglesias here, right? Let's McNeil bat, and he strikes out, and the Mets don't really have a crack at it the rest of the night. So, yeah, I was actually rather annoyed with McNeil's participation in the playoffs, personally.
Yeah, it was odd.
It was.
It's very unusual. I mean, honestly, what they did, same thing with Senga, right? Like they kind of like tried to make fetch happen with these 2 injured players in the postseason. So it does kind of suck that I feel like he would have had good playoff moments had he been given much of a real opportunity to do so, but he only played 3 playoff games as a healthy player in his career. So that's unfortunate. I mean, some of the ones that come to my mind, the 4th of July home run he hit this year that we talked about in the weekly pod was like a cool flipping the game around home run. There's a catch he made against the White Sox in Chicago. I think that's when Gary referred to him as a flying squirrel for the first time, where he leapt and he landed into the netting on the side and kind of like bounced back onto the field. That was pretty cool.
Gave him the nickname. That's what officially coined him the nickname, Flying Squirrel.
Yeah, there's some cool defensive moments like that. I know there's some other hits. They're not coming to my mind as easily because I think a lot of his best moments were 2022 and before that. There's been significantly less in the past few seasons, but those are a couple of ones that come to my mind. I don't know if I'm missing anything egregious.
So Jeff McNeil, I'll add for the record, finishes 11th in Mets history in B-WAR, Baseball References WAR statistic.
11th?
11th all time. You want to hear the names he's ahead of?
Wow, that's crazy.
So he finishes with 23 WAR. Howard Johnson had 22. Mookie Wilson had 20.8. John Stearns had 19.6. Bud Harrelson at 18.6. Cleon Jones, John Olerud, Lenny Dykstra, Kevin McReynolds, Jerry Grody, and then his former teammate Michael Conforto. That's the top 20 in Mets history. You know who he's right behind in B-WAR for his career? The player ahead of him had 23.3 B-WAR, and that is Pete Alonso.
Wow.
So there you go.
That's a lot higher than either of us thought he would be. So, I mean, he's definitely in the top 100. He's probably in the top 50, I guess. And a longevity has a lot to do with that, right? How many Mets can you say played somewhat every day for an 8-year span? There's not that many.
Jeff McNeil moments. I've got the opening day home run that he hit in 2021. I think it's tough not to think about the raccoon thing. I don't want to make that my iconic Jeff McNeil moment, though. It's really like the 2019 season was very fun. He also had an outstanding catch in 2018. I believe it was against the Braves, where it was at second base, and it was the moment I wanted this guy to be my everyday second baseman. Yeah, Jeff McNeil. Ironic. He's definitely a top 100, Matt. May end up being closer to the top 50 the more we play things out. But maybe that's an off-season conversation for a different time. Rich, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I mean, we asked David Stearns, if you're going to do something, please do it before the holidays. So appreciate it. If you're going to do any more moves, honestly,
Sunday. Do it Sunday.
Do it tonight or wait until after the week, because once we get to tomorrow, it starts to get a little hairy. I think probably for all of us. So take a break or do something again in like an hour. Otherwise, like hopefully I'll see you this weekend. And not before that.
Please.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody who's been watching. Like over 3,000 people at 4:00 on a Monday right before Christmas on YouTube and on our Twitter account. We really appreciate it, and the engagement, like you were saying, Andrew, has been really fun. It makes these just like much more of a conversation, and I look forward to these whenever they do randomly pop up.
Indeed. Thank you, as Rich said, to everybody for tuning in. If you dug it, please like this video. Remember to subscribe if you're listening on the podcast feed. 5 stars, especially on Apple. I will read them out loud on the pod if they're good enough. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Spotify as well. We'll be back when something happens. Hopefully, it's not interrupting our holiday plans. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go, Mets. And in the words of the immortal Gary Cohen, we are out of here.